Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to immediately text in someone. You open your heart vulnerable. You send a message that took you courage to write. And thanks silence, 1 hour passes, you read it, but they don't respond. And in that silence, you feel it, the rejection, the confusion, the H of being too much. Maybe not mail you something gonna shock you. T-E-H-E, Avoidant, Tina, Scapio, you. Not because you're chasing them. Maybe that was your begging. Because they felt you, and once a soul like yours has felt, it's never forgotten. Let's get real for a second. In a world for a fuss where people scroll through 200 faces a day on their phones, where a hi can turn into gusty believe we're forgettable. It's easy to think that if someone walked away, especially an avoidant partner, they must not care. That they temporary chapter in someone else's emotional story. But here's what they don't tell you. When you've shown up with real emotion in a safe space to be seen, heard, and held, you leave an imprint, not a memory. Not just a moment, an imprint, something that lands in the body remembers even when the mind tries to bury it. Think about this like scent. You ever walk into a room, smell someone's perfume, and instantly, you're not thinking about them every day, but bam, one smell and it all comes back. The laughter, the connection, maybe it was your story. The tears, the moments, that's what emotional, and you hold someone through their chaos instead of judging them. They feel that. When you respond with softness when they remember that. When you saw their brokenness and didn't run away, that mattered. And for someone avoidant who spent more from closeness, dodging intimacy like it's a trap. You are unforgettable. You show them something they didn't knew were craving. Now, let's take this into the real world for a moment. You ever had a teacher in school you'll never forget? Maybe they were tough. But if they saw you, they challenged you, they made you better. Maybe you didn't appreciate them fully at the time. But years later, you remember them. You remember believed in you when you didn't believe in yourself. You remember the old story. You remember the one who stayed long have to. That's imprint energy. Avoidant doesn't the person who created a safe emotional space for them, even if they couldn't stay or disconnected. They might try to minimize it. They might say things like, you were great, I just wasn't ready, or I need to work. Maybe they say nothing at all. But here's the truth that lies under all of that. You change them. Even if they don't admit it, even if they don't see it on the surface, because impact isn't always loud. In fact, the deepest emotional shifts are usually as watching. They happen in the middle of the night when they hear your voice in their head saying, you deserve to be loved, even when your lines, when they're lying in bed and they realize they pushed away was the person who saw everything and didn't leave. That's the kind of love you gave. And they disappeared. You know what's crazy? Most avoidant people come back. Or try to, weeks, months, even years later. And they always say the same thing, we're doing. Or, I didn't know how to handle someone like you. Translation. You left an imprint I couldn't ignore. This in not with sadness, but with power. Because even if they don't come back, you left something behind in them. You planted a seed of healing. You're up to their pattern. You made them feel. And for someone who's built their healing, that's life-altering. This is why you don't need revenge. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to scream into the void you were. Your impact already happened. And here's the part no one talks about. They might never admit it because to voice their own emotional limitations. And most avoidants aren't ready for that. Yet, but don't confuse silence for absence. Don't mistake distance for indifference. They felt too much, not too little. So don't walk around thinking your love was wasted. Don't let the world convince you that someone they didn't care. Because in reality, you made them confront something inside running from for years, and THHT is the emotional imprint. It's real. There. And it's powerful. So if you've ever loved deeply and been ever poured your heart out to someone who didn't to do with it, if you've ever thought, did I even matter? Let me say this loudly, yes, you mattered, not just to their heart, to their nervous system, to their growth, to their emotional awakening. You were the moment they'll come back again. Whether they say it or not, your imprint remains. Hey, let's break a might open. Just so emotion the way you do doesn't mean they don't have emotion. Just because someone pulls away when they don't feel deeply. The truth is, avoidants are not emotionless. They are overwhelmed. When someone has an avoidant, attachment system is wired around one central belief: closeness isn't safe. Somewhere along the way. Maybe in childhood, maybe from trauma, maybe from a pattern. Emotional intimacy equals danger. Vulnerability meant loss. Being open meant getting hurt. So what do? They adapt. They learn to suppress. Put up walls not because they hate love, but because they don't trust it. And when you come along, open, available, honest, they don't think, wow, this is the catch. It's not that they don't feel. It's that they feel too much and don't know with it. Let me give you a real life example. Imagine someone who's never learned to swim. You throw them into the deep end of pooling, not because they hate water, because they're drowning in it. That's what emotional closeness feeds. They're not trying to ruin the moment. They're not intentionally sabotaging connection. They're panicking. Now here's where it gets even more real and sorts to experience love that's calm, consistent, and emotionally safe. They don't trust it. It doesn't match their blueprint, their social games to proving their worth. When you show up with secure energy, you confuse their entire system. Maybe it's like someone who grew up with don't relax. They don't relax. They reach for armor, not as you're a threat. But because peace feels unfamiliar. So if you've ever had an avoidant partner pull you right after a beautiful moment, like after a romantic trip, or a deep conversation, or an intimate connection, it's not because you felt, it's because they felt too much of it. The emotions rose, and they didn't have the inner to tone down. Not because they wanted to hurt your cue, but because it's all they knew how to do. Think about that coworker who seemed professional, but the moment you ask about their life, they clam up. You didn't do anything wrong. You just touched something tender. And they retreat behind the wall they've lived behind for years. It's not personal. It's protective. Avoidants don't lack feeling. They lack past part. They often punish themselves for it. They know they're missing something. They know they're holding back. Many of them are stuck in a silent loop as let someone in. Or, why do I ruin things when they're finally good? But again, maybe it's not because they don't care. It's because chem equals risk. Now here's where Yayu come in. When you love someone like this, you will be tempted to internalize your error too. If I was just a little easier, they wouldn't pull away. Or if I didn't text too much, maybe that was you wouldn't shut down. But that is, you didn't because the overwhelm. You revealed it. You didn't break them. You showed them what's already unhealed, powerful, but it's also hard because it means that no matter how safe, gentle, or patient you are, some people will still run. Maybe that was your own for them. Because you're right, a version that they haven't met yet. Let that land. It's too much. You're too real for to wearing. You showed them love that didn't demand, didn't manipulate. They didn't disappear at the first sign, though, while beautiful. Also feels dangerous to someone who equates love with pain. It's like offering sunlight to someone who'll flinch. Not because the light is harmful, because it exposes everything. And yet, somewhere deep down they remember it. That hug that lingered longer than they expected. That late night conversation where you really saw them. That text where you said, I'm not going anywhere, even when it's messy. They remember that. Because avoidants don't forget even if they couldn't stay in it, they carry it. They carry you. So the next time you find yourself without caring at all, remember silence is not absence of feeling. Distance is not absence of emotion. It's the presence of emotional emergent presence. That wasn't too much. It was everything they weren't ready to receive yet. Let that empower you. Because you weren't rejected. You were regems. That's the most beautiful and terrifying thing in the world. There's a powerful shift that happens when being yourself. When your energy is no longer built around chasing love, fixing people, or earning your worth. You stop needing to prove anything and everything. That's what secure energy does. It becomes a mirror. It doesn't pull people like a magnet. It shows them who they are. Think about stones torn by force. It attracts metal because of its charge. And in relationships, that's often how it starts when you're of value. You do things to magnetize attention. You text first. You explain yourself. You adjust your needs. Maybe you shape shift. You mood shift. When you start healing, when you become emotionally grounded, you stop doing all that. You don't try to attract. You simply exist in your truth. And that's your secure and happens. Your secure energy becomes a mirror. And mirrors don't lie. Imagine standing in front of a mirror after a day. You not love what you see. You might notice tired eyes, messy hair, wrinkles, scars. But the mirror, it doesn't judge. It simply reflects. That's what your reflection of who someone is. And not everyone is ready to see that. Especially the avoidant. You see, when someone avoidant gets close, they're not encountering just you. They're encountering a version of themselves they've been avoiding. The mirror doesn't just show your love. Their fears, their habit, their walls. And for someone who survived by hiding behind those things, maybe that was confronting. It's not that your security reveals them. And revelation is terrifying when you've built an identity around avoidance. Let's take a simple real world use. Now, loud music while yelling, chow us. Now imagine you walk in and you're completely calm. You speak softly. You sit still. You don't match the energy. Suddenly people notice the contrast. They become more aware of their own noise. Some may quiet down. Some may leave the room. Some may get defensive. Not because you said anything, but because your presence highlighted their chaos. That's what happens when you show up secure in an insecure world. You don't chase. You don't beg. You don't calm us. That groundedness, it makes people uncomfortable. Not because it's wrong, but because it exposes what's for someone avoidant who's used to partners that play emotional games, manipulate, or withdraw to get attention. Your stability feels foreign. They're cold for love. They're used to distance, hot and cold dynamics, or being in control of emotional closeness. Maybe you're not playing that game, but you're playing they fix them. You're not feeding their fear. You're just being real, and that realness acts like a mirror. It reflects everything back to their fear of closeness, their unwillingness to communicate, their emotional shutdowns, their triggers. So what do? Many, not because you did something, you be playing a role and started showing them the truth. Secure energy doesn't manipulate. It doesn't strategize. It doesn't punish or reward based on emotion. When someone's entire pattern is built around emotional self-protection, your consistency feels like a spotlight. Imagine being in a dark room for years on the lights. It's jarring. Even if the room is beautiful, your first reaction might be to cover your eyes. Not because the light is bad, but because the love, that's what your love is. It's a light they weren't ready to face. It's not your job to dim that light. Just so feel comfortable in the dark. It's not your responsibility to feel safe in their emotional limitations. What's true is that you're secure energy for someone else's growth, or it will be the reason they walk away. And either outcome is okay, because here's the beauty of being a mirroring how someone wrecks. You're responsible for the truth you reflect. So stop wondering, what could I have done differently? You showed up in truth. You loved without manipulation. You gave without conditions. Maybe you offered stability in a world addicted is too much for them. It's not a sign you should change. It's a sign they're not ready for the version they'd have to become to meet you. Your energy didn't repel them. It revealed them. And some people aren't ready for their reflection. When they might be, and when they are, they'll remember you. Not because you chased. Not because you pulled them in like magnet. You stood firm. You stayed whole. You were the mirror that showed them who they really are. And that's unforgettable. One been there. We've all day are texting regularly, sharing jokes, going deep, feeling something real. And then, suddenly, they vanish. No warning. No fight. No closure. Just silence, deafening. It makes your mind spin. It makes you question everything. Did I say something wrong? Did I push too hard? Was I not enough? You sit there trying to see text, every emoji, every word. And the loudest thought that always creeps in. They must not have cared. But here's where you get it wrong. Disappearance does not always mean indifference. In fact, more often than not, it's the opposite. When someone ghosts you, when they pull bait, they tear into the shadows of their own emotional confusion. It's easy to assume they never felt what you felt. It's easy to write the story as, they were just poor, it was all fake. But truth isn't always loud. Sometimes, realest feelings are the realest people. The ones who disappear are the ones who feel too much, not too little. Let's take a real life analogy. Think about a person who sees something the first time, say the ocean. They've heard about it, seen pictures, maybe even dreamed of it, but now they're standing in front of it. And instead of running in, they freeze. They turn away back up. Why? Because that kind of beauty, that kind of depth, that kind of power, it over the nervous system. Especially for someone who's never known safety. Maybe that was your old story, who's never felt held by something. That's what your love was. It wasn't indifferent. It was too real for someone who was still swimming in fear. And so, they disappeared. Not because they didn't know how to handle what they were feeling. We live in a world that equates consistency with disinterest. But the heart isn't that simple, especially not the heart of someone themselves from pain. Think about it like this. Some people are terrified of heights. They want to climb the mountain. They train for it. They say they're ready, but when they get to the edge and look down, panic sets in. Not because they don't want the view, because fear shouts louder. Relationships. Someone meets you. They feel something undeniable. Connection, safety, emotion. And instead of moving toward it, their field stories take over. What if I get hurt? What if they leave me? What if I mess this up? And sometimes, rather than face those questions, they vanish into their own emotional fog. Not because they didn't feel, because they did, and it scared the hell out of them. Here's scared. Easier to go someone than to say, I'm afraid of how much I like you. It's easier to walk away than to say, I don't know how to be loved like bend, you're fine, than to admit, you touched something I wasn't ready to confront. So no, maybe their disappearance doesn't always equate an emotional overload. Sometimes it's an old trauma being triggered. Sometimes it's their inner child's blood that feels too steady. This doesn't excuse their behavior. It doesn't make ghosting okay. But it helps you understand that what it was about them, not you. You didn't cause their flight. You revealed their fear. You didn't mess up something perfect. You offered something deep, and they weren't ready to receive it. Think about how many times you've avoided things you actually cared about. Maybe you didn't apply for the degree rejection. Maybe you pulled back from someone who cared because you didn't think you were worthy. Maybe you procrastinated on something that meant too much to you. Avoidance is often a form of protection. It doesn't mean you didn't care. It means you care much. It scared you. That's exactly how many avoiding people experience love. They don't know how to say, I'm overwhelmed. So instead, they vanish still, they still think about you. They replay conversations. They read old messages. They watch your stories. They sit in silence wondering what it were, a diversion, or with the tools to show up for the kind of love you offered. And one day, maybe months or years later, they'll say, I handled it better. Or, you were the real thing. But you don't need to wait for that. Because the most powerful thing is someone disappearing does not diminish your worth. Maybe their inability to stay is not proof much. It's proof that it was real enough to trigger their fears. You were real. You were steady. You were open. And if they couldn't handle that, it's not your job to chase. It's not your job to turn your light down so someone else doesn't feel exposed. Maybe their silence might sting. It doesn't care. It means they didn't know how to. There's a world of difference between the two. Here's a truth that will shake you. You are loved someone who ran from you. You weren't a mistake in their life. You were helper that started their healing. You weren't chaos. You weren't drama. You were the pattern interrupt. Let's get real. Most avoidant people then protected emotional shell. Their life is built on avoiding vulnerability, managing connection at arm's length, and keeping everything just safe and everything in feelings. Their relationships tend to stay surface level. They enjoy moments, but not too deeply. They give a little, then pull away. They push them right back out when it gets too real. Then you came in, and you weren't playing by their rules. You weren't pulling back every time they timed the eggshells to keep the peace. You were consistent, open, emotionally available, and deeply tuned in. And let me tell you, that is disruptive energy. You didn't eat into their formula. You didn't mirror their dysfunction. You didn't feed their belief, that real leaf. You shattered it. And when someone's been walking through life avoiding pain, controlling closeness, and compartmentalizing their heart, someone to feel like a gift at first, you feel like an earthquake. You shake their foundation. You expose the cracks they've been covering up with temporary people and emotional distance. You trigger things that no one else ever did. Not because you're toxic, but because you're the first person who made that required nothing but truth. Think about it this way. Imagine a pond that's been still for years. No movement, no disruption, no waves. And then some water doesn't stay calm. It ripples. That's what your presence did in their emotional world. Maybe that was story. You made them feel things. They brought up old wounds they didn't know were still bleeding. You stirred the still water of their creels. And those ripples, that's the start of healing. But healing doesn't always look beautiful at first. Sometimes healing looks like confusion, science, even sabotage, because before the growth comes the discomfort. Before the breakthrough comes the breakdown. Maybe you didn't just make feel seen, and some of what they saw was painful. You made them aware of their patterns. You made them question their beliefs about hard shell they'd use to protect themselves. And that is not small work. That's spiritual level impact. Maybe they didn't thank you. Maybe they walked away acknowledging the transfer knowledge and you initiated. But make no mistake, maybe they are not the same person after meeting, but because you demanded it, but because your presence alone held a different frequency. You didn't love them conditionally, and nearly. You didn't disappear when they got difficult. You stayed present. You offered truth. You brought medicine. Even the meta story. Let's use a daily life example to really bring this home. Have you ever had someone tell you slates in the moment, but months later you realized it changed your life? Maybe a teacher who told you to stop playing small. A friend who called you out on your up a mirror and made you see your potential even when you weren't ready to own it yet. In the moment, it may have felt frustrating, maybe didn't even want to hear it, but later you remembered it, you carried it, you realized it was the moment ever you were the avoidant. Yeah, you were that message. You were the first one who said, I'm not going to play this half-hearted game. I see who you are. I feel who you could be. I'm not here to be tolerated. I'm here to be met. And that truth, it rang loud in their soul. Even their truths run from it. So if they ran, don't let that make you think you failed. You didn't fail them. You didn't scare them off. You woke them up. You brought the mirror in the room. Maybe they couldn't hold your gaze. Maybe they turned away. But they saw enough to never forget. And that is the start of healing. They may need months, even years, to unpack what they felt with you. But they will. Because when you've been asleep for years, you don't just go back to dreaming the same dream. You start asking different questions. You start wanting more. And that's because of you. So stop their immediate reaction. You weren't just another, you were a turning point. And whether they said it or not, whether they even know it yet themselves, you be that force that forced them to start their healing. And that is something they'll carry with them forever. Let's stop glamorizing emotional distance. The people who pull away, who ghost, who shut down when love gets real are my to read. The truth is often far more human and far more heartbreaking. Their distance isn't a wall. It's wanting induce that you stop taking their silence personally. You stop internalizing their absence as your inadequacy. You start seeing the truth that behind every shutdown or pull away moment is not a cold heart. It's a hurting one. Avoidance don't put between you and you don't care. They put space between you and them because somewhere in their story, closeness became dangerous. Maybe they had parents who only gave affection word. Maybe they were told to stop crying, to toughen up, to hide their needs. Maybe love in their life was inconsistory. Totally gone the next. So their nervous system adapted. They taught themselves, if I don't get too close, I can't get hurt. And when you show up, constancy with love, they feel that wound reopen. It's not that you hurt them. It's that you're close enough to get that close. Their subconscious screams, run before they do. Let's bring in Hedgina, someone who got badly burned by fire as a child. Ever since then, they've avoided it. No candles, no campfires, not even a cozy fireplace. In and light a candle in the room, not to scare them, but to bring warmth and beauty. They don't lean in, they recoil. they leave the room. Not because their brain associates fire with pain. That's what love feels like to an avoidant person. You didn't bring harm, you brought warmth. But warmth feels Donjali knows love is a source of trauma, and their instinct isn't to lean in, it's to protect the wound. Now, this doesn't mean you should tolerate being someone's emotional crash test dummy. Maybe it does mean you should stop blowing use retreats from intimacy, especially when you've shown up in truth with kindness and clarity. Because here's what most people don't delve themselves from you, they're usually not running from you. Maybe they're running from the version poses. They're running from the part of them that doesn't know how to hold what you're offering. Secure love puts pressure on the part survival mode. And that pressure, though healing, feels terrifying at first. Have you ever gone to a massage therapist on a not so deep you didn't even know it was there? Maybe that was your old story. That sharp pain isn't them hurting you, it's already sore. That's what your connection did. It found a wound they've been hiding for years. They might say things like, I just need right time. Or the classic, you deserve someone better. But what they're really saying is, you see me too clearly, and I'm normal without falling apart. It's not rejection, it's revelation. And here's the thing. Most avoidant people don't consciously understand what they're doing. Their distance feels like logic to them, like safety, like control. But it's actually fear. It's unprocessed pain wrapped in self-built emotional walls. But those walls aren't a brick. They're made of bruises. And every time someone tries to get in, they're flipping you out. They're trying to keep the past from rushing back in. Now, does this mean you should wait forever for someone around? No, you're not here trying to bleed yourself to prove that love can be safe. But what it does mean is that you can responsibility. You can stop thinking, if I just loved them better, they would have stayed. You can stop thinking that there's proof that you weren't in bad enough, because it's not about your value. It's about their capacity. You offered connection. They responded, not a sign you were wrong. That's a sign you touched something real. And if that truth hurts right now, let it. Because it means your love was honest. It means you gave from a place of depth. And even if they couldn't meet you there, you didn't imagine the connection. They felt it too. Love doesn't just bring joy. Sometimes it brings unhealed parts we thought we buried. It shines light on wounds we swore were scarred over. So the next time someone avoids you, time they pull after a way opening up, the next time they go quiet after feeling something deep, remember. Maybe that was your old story. They're not walking away from love. They're part of themselves that still believes love will destroy them. And until they heal that wound, they won't be able to stay close to tools. You didn't hit a wall. You touched a wound. And that changes everything. There's that strange kind of pain that fear of a strange pain of numbness. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It doesn't show up crying in the rain or tomb doors. Numbness is the quiet kind of pain. It looks like disconnection, indifference. Business, it wears the mask of, I'm fine. And animate avoidant people live in that space for years until someone like you shows up and wakes them up from it. That someone was you. You didn't just shook hair, you shook them. You cracked the ice they'd been walking on. You brought life back into places inside born dead. Because for avoidant people, it's easier to be numb than to be vulnerable. When you've spent your whole life suppressos and training emotions, self-detach as a survival skill, feeling becomes threatening. Love isn't light. Love isn't light, it's pressure, intimacy, exposure. So what do? They build lives that look functional but feel emotionally flat. They keep relationships casual. They control of everything, especially their feelings, until you came in like emotional, lightable, and impossible to ignore. You didn't even have to say much. It wasn't your words. It was your energy, your presence, your way of looking at them, your ability to hold space without demanding anything in return. That kind of energy, it's rare. It's disarming. It's holy. You ask questions, no listening in a way that made them wonder if maybe, just maybe, they were worth listening to. You didn't force your way in. You just kept showing up, soft, steady, belittled. The numbness began to crack. They started to feel things they hadn't felt in years. Not always good things. Sometimes it was fear. Sometimes it scared them, but they felt, and that in itself was revolutionary. You didn't bring them peace right away. And truth. Warmth is what breaks through numbness like sunlight through a frozen window. Think about someone who's been out into the long. When you finally bring them into the warmth, it doesn't feel good at first. It hurts. Their skin stings. Their nerves wake up. It's uncomfort up. It's unproof of life. It's the pain that says, hey, you're still here. You still feel. You're not gone. That's what you love, someone who didn't know if they could feel anymore. You touched the part of them that had gone silent. And that's why they may have pulled a gun. Does it always look like running towards you? Sometimes it looks like fear. Fear, panic, retreat. That was your hurry because you hurt them, but because you think still existed. And here's the most important thing. You didn't do it through drama. You didn't manipulate or play games. You were trying to fix them. You simply loved them from your center, from your truth. And that energy, that awakened energy, maybe doesn't just impact someone's temporal story. Even if they left, even if they ghosted, even if they pretended you didn't mean that much, they feel it because you're the one who reminded it underneath the armor. You're the one who reminded them what it's like to be felt, not just tolerated. You're the one who reminded them then re-em with performance. It comes with presence. Let's take a simple real-life example. Think about when you hear a song, hood memory. Maybe it's a song your parents used to play or a song you heard during a special summer. You didn't even know you remember it, but the emotion floods body. It's not logical, it's emotional recall. That's what your presence became for them. A soul-level trigger, a song they formed the background of their life. And even if they turn the volume down, they can't unhear it now. Maybe you're part of their emotional memory, and he just summoned who came and went, but as the one who woke them up from a numb state they were convinced was permanent. So stop questioning whether you mattered. You moved something in them. And here's what's wild. People don't always know they're numb until who makes them feel. So at first, they may mislabel you, call you too intense, or say, this mobile, I just need space. But what they really mean is, haven't felt this alive in a maybe that was story, long time, and I don't know what to do. Okay, because whether they're ready or not, you planted something in them. A signal, a heartbeat, a flicker of light in a dim hallway. You remind normal. And one day, when they finally do the work, when they look back, when they start reconnecting to their you, not because you fixed them, because you woke them up. And that is something no one can forget. When someone resists you, pulls back, pulls back, in questions, shrinks from intimacy, it's easy to think you're doing something wrong. You start second-guessing yourself, I'm putational, too intense. Should I tone it down? Should I back off? What if the very thing you see, confirmation, and if their pushback isn't rejection, would prove that you're touching something real? Let's flip the narrative here. Resist. Sometimes it's the body's way of reacting when truth starts to press up against denial. Think about when you stretch a tight muscle, because it doesn't want to loosen up, but because it's been tense for so long it forgot what ease feels like. That's what it's like when someone who missionally meets someone who brings presence, safety, and depth. You come in with energy that doesn't play games, with communication that's clear, with love that was not on performance, and suddenly they're being asked to feel something real, to stay when they want to run, to speak when they've been silent, and their system says nope, too much. But too much is often just what they've never had before. You're not overwhelming. They're just a daily life example. Imagine someone who's lived in a dim room for years. Their eyes have adjusted. They've gotten used to the shadows. Then day comes in and opens the curtains. Sunlight floods the room. And what happens? Their eyes sting. They squint. They might even beg you to close the curtains. The light is harmful. But because they've forgotten how to see clearly, that's what your love does. That's what your truth does. It opens light into places they've kept hidden. And yes, at first they resist. Because real love is exposing. Real intimacy is revealing, and most people handle either. Avoidant people, especially, have built identities around control and emotional regulation. They've survived by not needing too much. So when you walk in offering consistent connection, honest vulnerability, it pokes the bear, and an emotional do. It grows, it retrails, it pushes back. That's resistance. But that resistance isn't proof that they don't care. It's proof that you're rattling something done dormant. Here's the truth. No one tells you when someone resists you. Maybe they're often resisting. The part to be seen to be is terrified of what might happen if they are. They're not saying, I don't want you. They're saying, you dishonest yet. So instead of shrinking in the face of resistance, what if you reframed it? What if you saw it as evidence that you're a net who your truth is cutting through the noise? That your love is challenging a story they've told for years, that love has to be earned, that closeness equals pain, that they're safer alone. This doesn't mean you tolerate disrespectuality. Boundaries are still necessary. It does mean you don't abandon, you're still figuring out how to meet you. You can hold your ground with grace. You can say, I understand this feels uncomfortable. I love honestly. I speak truthfully. I show up fully. Because that's your power. You don't shrink in the face, and in doing so, and you offer something most people have never had, a safe place to feel deeply and still be accepted. Let me give you one more example. Thinking wanting to feel better, but the moment the therapist starts asking the right questions, what happens? They resist, they deflect, they get uncomfortable. It's not because the therapist is wrong, but because they weren't ready to go that deep. Still, that first question lingers. That one moment of truth plants a seed. That's your seed planter. You may not get to see the tree grow. You may not be the one they end up with, but you were the one who cracked the surface, who made them look inward for the first time in a long time. That's a gift. Even if they resisted it, they'll remember it. You didn't make them because you were wrong for them. You made them uncomfortable because you're real with them, and that realness touched something tender. So next time you face resistance, don't collapse. Start dimming your light. Don't stand. Remember, resistance is feedback. It means your presence is powerful. It means your words are landing. It means your love is real enough to be as real light as what doesn't matter. They resist what matters too much. And that's you. You matter that much.